So tonight is a very interesting topic. I called it Charity Begins at Home. So does honesty. Last week we spoke about hypocrisy. And tonight you may think is about another similar topic that has to do with honesty, or the opposite of hypocrisy. But it's not exactly what we're going to be talking about. Even though I called it Charity Begins at Home, it's much more about double standards. And when I say double standards, I'm not talking about the regular double standards that you may have heard, where people apply different standards to different individuals. This is much more about someone who is not 100% sincere, one who is not genuine. Now, even though that appears to be describing someone who's a hypocrite, as you will soon see, it's not. A hypocrite is one who has two faces, two completely very different faces, of which he is aware of. A person who is not 100% genuine, who is not sincere, is something that he himself is not aware of. He himself has a double standard in how he behaves at home versus how he behaves at work. The rabbis call this individual echad balev echad bapeh. Many people speak in a certain way, conduct themselves in a certain way when they are in public, when they meet people at work, but they act differently when they are at home. Their heart, their true essence, is not being reflected at work. It's not that they're putting up a facade. They're not intentionally misleading and deceiving people like the hypocrite. They just behave differently in public than they do at home. You've seen the word sincere, sincerely, at the end of a letter. What does that mean? Sincerely, or sincere, is honesty of the mind. One who's completely free from hypocrisy. As we will later see, there's a certain purity to him. Genuine also, so when someone is genuine, we mean that he has the reputed qualities of character that he displays. He actually has them. He's genuine. He's not just trying to be nice, he's really nice. He's really kind. He's really charitable. Many people are not genuine, are not sincere, even though they behave so. They try. They would like to be. But they're not so all the time. We're going to be talking about the ideal situation where one is sincere and genuine, pure and honest everywhere, at home and at work, at all times, even during difficult times. Ultimately, it's the challenges of life, the ups and downs, that will determine if one is real or not. You know, same thing we figure out when we're trying to see if one is a friend or not. In time of need, you will know who your true friends are indeed. Because if it's not a time of need, people will flatter, people will say all kinds of things to you. Especially if you have money, everybody wants to be your friend. How do you know who's a true friend? Well, there's another lecture about that. So in judging one's character, it's not a simple matter. You cannot really judge an individual the first meeting you have with him. You cannot even really judge him at work. You can judge his production, the quality of his work perhaps, if he's nice, if he's cooperative, if he gets along with people, but perhaps his real essence, the real person, you're not seeing. Ask his wife, and you'll get more reliable information about how he really is. Generally speaking, when you hear the term double standards, it's really about something different. People do have double standards when they treat people differently, when they have certain expectations of certain people more than of others, or when they apply double standards in their conduct. As there's a Latin saying that says, alis si licet, tibi non licet. For everybody else, it's okay to do something, but not for you. So when people hear double standards, that's what they think about, is that people sometimes, unfortunately, use double standards, and they shouldn't. This symptom of double standards is more related to discrimination, where people discriminate or treat people differently because of their race, because of religion, because of their gender. And it also is possibly related to prejudice. Certain people have prejudices. And what exactly is a prejudice? It could either be a preconceived, unfavorable judgment of a certain individual or a certain group. It could be that one has formed an opinion before becoming aware of all the facts. Unfortunately, that's how it works in the real world, that people will not necessarily consider you based on your merit. They may have other considerations. And all those considerations are truly unfair. They're not just. And there's a certain degree of dishonesty in how people treat others, in how they look at them, how they judge them, and so forth. This is a problem, but we're not going to talk about that because this is unfortunately something that is rampant, has always been around. People have these inclinations in how they treat people, prejudices and so forth, discrimination. They shouldn't, obviously. But the double standards that we need to understand here is how come, and this is a question that is asked by psychologists, how come people themselves behave differently, have different standards when they deal with others versus how they are at home? That's really more what I want to talk about. And that is why I call it charity begins at home, because obviously the message that we want to convey is that certain efforts need to begin at home and not at work, because the home is where everything begins. The home matters more than anything else, believe it or not. So this is a more, I guess, a more valuable concept than the other one. The regular double standards we're all familiar with. It's something that needs to be tackled. It's something that should not exist. But not as much attention has been given to this very, very unusual phenomena that people behave differently depending on the scenery, depending on where they are. Is it at work? If it's at a wedding, social gathering. Now, the fact that they behave differently is acceptable to some extent because that is completely natural for people to just behave differently when they are in public. I mean, it's not that they are with their closest family members. It's not that they can be so open with them. So you can't expect people to be exactly the same in the public scene as they are at home. At home they feel more comfortable. They perhaps would say things differently. They use a different kind of language, express themselves. So to some extent, that's okay. When does the problem begin? When they are very, very different. At home, he's angry. At home, he gets upset often, and he voices his opinion. And at work, he's so nice, he's so understanding, so considerate. Yes, yes, yes. He's a yes man, as they say. And at home, he's a no man. Everything is no. That's where the problems begin. Why? Why should this be so? Remember, we're not talking about a hypocrite. He's somehow forced to be like that. He somehow feels that he just needs to put up his best face in public. But that best face, he could do so at home too. But for some reason he does not. So there's a lack of integrity here. There's a lack of purity here, a lack of sincerity. He's not genuine when he's in public. And he's definitely not genuine at home too. Something is missing here. So when I say charity begins at home, what are we saying? What we're saying is that in reality, all those good qualities that you are demonstrating, that you're putting on display at work, they should begin at home. That's where you build yourself. That's where you begin to build your character. That is where you prove yourself. Don't try to prove yourself at work. To your own family members, to your wife, to your kids, they matter more. Do they? Should they matter more? Yeah, the Torah says so. The Torah says that the home is the center of all affections, but not its limit. Where does it say that? In the very beginning, when it talks about marriage, that when you get married, you leave your parents and you focus on your wife. Now, even though it says Vazav, you leave, it doesn't mean you abandon them. It doesn't mean you forget about them. You still have the mitzvah, the commandment of showing your respect, taking care of them. After all, they took care of you. That continues even after their death. Their memories continue in our heart, and we do things for them after they depart from this world. But the focus is important. The Torah has to tell us priorities. The Torah has to tell us where your focus needs to be. Husband and wife need to focus on each other in order to build up that relationship. It doesn't stop there, however. That's the center of all affection, but it's not the limit. You're kind and charitable and nice to people outside the home too. But that's where it begins. And if you begin to do a good job at home, then God willing, hopefully, you will be able to be a good person outside the home as well. A person cannot be a genuinely good, honest individual outside the home and not be so at home. It doesn't work like that. The rabbis tell us a true, honest individual is honest everywhere, with everyone, at all times. Otherwise, he's not a truly honest person. He's honest once in a while when it suits him. True honesty, true sincerity is all the time. And you know, life has many ups and downs. There are many challenges. And it is those challenges that will test us and will determine how honest we are. We spoke about bribery. That's a test. The person is being tested. Will he accept a bribe? Will he commit something illegal? He's being tested. There are all kinds of tests that will put us in a situation where we can get angry, where we can react in a very, very nasty way, or we can control ourselves. All kinds of tests. Jealousy. Some people have a problem with that. It's a weakness. All kinds of situations. Our focus, however, tonight is much more on the integrity of the individual, his honesty and sincerity. He is demonstrating to a certain degree those qualities at work, but not so at home. He's having a hard time with that at home. The question is why? Why can't he be as nice at home as he is at work? Remember, he is nice. He's not putting up a show at work. He is nice. He is helpful to his co-workers. We're not talking about a hypocrite here who is just putting up a show or a facade. He really is nice. Takes somebody out to lunch. He really takes him out to lunch. buys him a gift. Wait a minute. Then why didn't you buy your wife a gift? Here at work, you're so nice, you cooperate, you never yell, you never raise your voice, and at home, you do so all the time. We're not talking about somebody that once in a while gets upset. We're talking about somebody that really is nasty. What's going on? This is what I call double standards. Remember, there's the other double standard, which is also not so nice. But this is much more serious. That within the individual himself, he's acting one way at home and another way at work, another way in the public, another way with his friends, and now with his own wife or with his own kids. What's going on? Charity begins at home, therefore, the rabbis tell us in different words, means that there are certain qualities that we have to develop first and foremost at home. If we don't develop them there, they will not be so strong anywhere else. It has to begin at home. You really want to adapt a good quality, honesty, then be honest at home. If you cheat at home, you're going to cheat sometime later on, one of these days, outside too. Begins at home, meaning that's where it matters the most. That's where you start developing it. That's where it counts. Another idea of charity begins at home is that it is the home where we are going to learn these qualities, where we're going to inherit these values, which tells us the bad news that if one does not have a role model at home to learn these values from, he has a handicap. He's beginning without a role model. You know how much more difficult it will be for him to learn certain things. Charity begins at home, therefore the second definition is that that's where we're going to pick it up. If something is morally right or wrong, yes, in school, society, we're going to read about it. But where does it begin? Where does it matter the most? At home. Thomas Jefferson said something very similar. Honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. Now, that saying has a lot more depth than what I'm just going to point out here. It's a very important idea that he expressed, but as far as what we're talking about, it means that it's the first chapter. And that's what I'm trying to concentrate on. This is where it begins. It's the home. The first chapter of the book of wisdom. One of the first lessons a child will learn. That is where he grows up, in the home. So if he has no role model there, if that charity does not begin at home, can he pick it up somewhere else? Maybe, but it may not be so strong. It may not be so assured. Even if he sees it at home, it's not assured, but he has a better chance. And the third definition of charity begins at home is that is where the seeds are planted, because its charity begins. It doesn't say that's where it ends. Begins means that's where the seeds are planted, but maybe the seeds will be planted and they will rot in the ground. We want those seeds to sprout. We want that plant to grow. We have to cultivate it for it to mature, for it to grow. We have to continue to water it even after we leave the home. So you have people that at home, maybe they do certain things right, but later on as they grow up, they go on their own way and they don't necessarily behave the way they were taught to behave. They had the seeds, but they never cultivated it. So honesty, which is one of those qualities that we're talking about, it will begin at home. Whether it will continue or not will depend on the choices we make. And I'm emphasizing here choices, so no one should ever come and say, as we will explain perhaps next week when we talk about the criminal mind, Some people claim that people are just born like that, degenerates. It's always about choices. We're always going to be making choices. People are affected by their environment, yes, but it's always going to come down to a choice that one will make. Are you going to become an honest individual or not? If one does work on himself, if one does continue to cultivate this plant, to cultivate the honesty, then one of these days he will mature and he will have integrity. What's that integrity all about? The best definition I found for integrity is it's the ability to uphold oneself to consistently moral and ethical standards. The key here is consistently. Integrity at all times. So now we can understand the second half of the verse that I began to explain a couple of weeks ago, that David HaMelech speaks about in Psalms and Tehillim. Who is the one that will ascend the mountain of God and be close to God, become a spiritual individual? One who's neki chapayim uvar levav. Neki chapayim means whose hands are clean, meaning he doesn't steal, he doesn't hurt anyone. You heard the saying, he can't even hurt a fly? His hands are clean. So, but what is var levav? What does it mean, purity of the heart? We didn't explain that. We partially talked about it when we spoke about hypocrisy. A hypocrite does not have a pure heart. Obviously not. He has two hearts. So what is a pure heart? Clean hands and a pure heart. Pure heart is integrity. Pure at all times with everyone. Not that he's nice at work and misbehaves at home. That's not a pure heart. Bar levav, he's pure. He's honest with everyone at all times, in every kind of situation, even if it's difficult. That's what bar levav means, which is what the rabbis tell us, that I mentioned earlier, that a true honest individual, a truly honest individual will be honest everywhere, not just at home with his relatives. It can't be that he's honest with them, with some people and not with others. Either he's honest or he's dishonest. You can't be honest with some and not honest with the rest. A true honest individual will be honest at all times with everyone. If you look up the origin of this saying, charity begins at home, you will find that they say that the origin is from England. It was used there in various forms to express that charity begins at home. Very nice. You know, that's where you learn to be charitable. The reality is that it is biblical in origin. You find a verse in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah, that says, "Umibsarcha al titalim." From your flesh you should not hide. Your flesh, your relatives. Because Judaism ascribes priorities to who gets charity first, who is helped first. Sometimes you have to ascribe priorities because there may be a lot of people you need to help, and you just can't help everyone. So we need to prioritize. So in the halakha, in Judaism, there are priorities of who gets first. The poor in your community, the poor of another community. Your own relatives come first. You have a certain responsibility to your own flesh first. That's just the way it is. To simplify matters for us, the rabbis tell us clearly what those priorities are. So from this verse in Yeshayahu, we learn you cannot hide from them. You cannot ignore them if they need your help. Meaning, charity does in fact begin at home. You have to take care of those who are closer to you. So even though it's very nice of you to be cooperative and good and kind at work, well, guess what? Your home comes first. And if a person is nice to his fellow workers and not nice to his wife and to his family, obviously he's committing a grave mistake and a sin. He's going to be losing out a lot. It's not just about doing the right or the wrong thing. We're talking about losing out in life. Because mistakes that are committed repeatedly at home cannot always be corrected later in life. Oh, I'm sorry that 30 years ago I did this to you or that to you, you know. Some kids are okay with that, but usually things that happened years ago are engraved in the memories of the children. And if scars have accumulated in the relationship between the husband and wife, scars that never healed, how are you going to make up after 30 years of fighting, criticizing, looking down at the individual, not being helpful? The love has dissipated. It's almost gone. The interest, therefore, is no longer there. How could you bring it back? It's possible, but it's so difficult. So we're not only talking about that this is not nice of you, that you're being kinder outside than you are at home. It's about a relationship, an investment with your family members, that if you don't do it right the first time around, you may never have a chance to fix it again. So, which one is a more important, more valuable investment? I think logic says the home. We don't even need the verse to tell us your own family, don't hide from them. The reason we have that verse is because some people are very cruel to their own family members. They don't care. So we need to have that. But common sense, logic dictates that which came from you, that which is closest to you, you should be more sensitive to them. So the question right now is, why? Why should so much effort go into the charity at home? Other than teaching the kids, other than being a model, why should that be the place where everything begins? The rabbis tell us that one's heart is affected by his actions. הלבבות נמשכות אחרי הפעולות. One's heart is affected by one's actions. And it is because of that that we have mitzvot, that we have commandments in the Torah. Those commandments affect us. When we perform them, they act upon us. They refine us. And because the human being is born a taker, and his goal is to be a giver, we need certain mitzvot, certain commandments that will instruct us or guide us to be a giver instead of a taker. It just happens to be that we spend a lot of time at home. We have kids, there's a wife, there may be parents. You have more of an opportunity to give to them than you have to the outside world. This is where it should begin. This is where we need to learn to give. Because according to Judaism, true, genuine, sincere love is the act of giving. Ultimately, that is what shows, that is what demonstrates if you care about someone, if you give to them. Not passion. Passion is passion. Love means to care. To care means to be considerate, to give to them, to look after them. That begins at home. That is where you have more opportunities to demonstrate that. And since we are born wanting to receive, wanting to take, that is the way human nature is born, we have to somehow get ourselves to become givers, to learn how to give. It doesn't happen overnight. We are therefore given opportunities to be considerate, kind, and sensitive to our spouse and to our kids, so that we can develop this instinct of wanting to give instead of wanting to take. Rabbis tell us a baby is born. You will see it already. His hands, his fist is closed. He wants to grab everything for himself. Look at an individual in the coffin when he has left this world and his hands are open, because you don't take anything with you. The hands are open. But when we come into this world, there's a certain selfishness, which is fine. Hashem wanted it that way. People have to care about themselves, otherwise they wouldn't be healthy, they wouldn't survive. So there is a certain level of selfishness, but the problem is some people use that selfishness to an extreme. They want everything only for themselves. And when we talk about the criminal mind, we'll focus on that, how pretty much what criminals all have in common is they think about themselves. It's all about themselves. That's where the problem begins. Most crimes that have been committed is because of selfishness. There's no need to speak about other concepts, other ideas, other weaknesses that people have. It all comes down to selfishness, because that's the way man is born. Unless he refines his character and learns to be a giver, not just a taker. All right. So how are we going to teach or train an individual to become a giver? We have mitzvot. Through the commandments that one performs, he could learn to become a giver. But it's one thing to learn, it's another thing to implement what you learn. A lot of people learn a lot, but they don't implement what they've learned. Now, can psychology help us perhaps? No. Because what does psychology do? Psychology can diagnose behavioral problems. And they can offer recommendations. You can't teach love with psychology. How are you going to teach someone to love someone using psychology? You can't. The psychology can diagnose a problem and they can make recommendations, but to actually teach how to love, no, that's not possible. It's ultimately going to be a choice that the individual is going to have to make in realizing how important it is for him to become a giver and not just a taker. He has to understand this on his own, and he has to practice. He has to implement certain things that will help him. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you certain keys. Keys that will open up this selfish heart and hopefully show him the way on how to become unselfish. First and foremost, one has to be aware of what the Rambam says. Maimonides says as follows. In the same way that people go to a doctor to recover from an illness, a physical illness, he prescribes them medication. And hopefully they recover. In the same way that there are doctors who treat physical illnesses, they are doctors of the soul that need to be consulted when there's a spiritual problem. Here we're talking about something spiritual in nature, not physical. This selfishness is not a physical illness. It's more in the spiritual realm, that this individual is thinking about himself, and because of that, he's not being genuine, he's not sincere, he's not honest, and because of that, he has double standards, right, of how he behaves at home, how he behaves elsewhere. He has a problem. He needs to learn integrity, honesty, and it's not easy. So what are going to be the remedies? What's going to be the prescription for such an individual? How do you develop unselfishness where you can truly love another individual and feel for them at all times? You want to perhaps suggest something? What can you do? What will be the medication? What will you prescribe? One of those remedies is called gratitude, the midah of hakarat hatov, being grateful. If one can train himself to be grateful, to be thankful for everything, I assure you this will go a long way. Let me tell you where we learned this from. I didn't just make it up. If you read the Torah, you will be amazed. The Torah does not discriminate against anyone who wants to convert. Pretty much, people really want to convert to Judaism, they're welcome. We don't encourage it. We don't tell people to do so. They don't need it. They can comply with the 7 Noachide laws and be righteous non-Jews, have a share to the world to come, and have a good life. Those who want to join the Jewish people are welcome to do so. But in the olden days, Ammon and Moab were excluded. 2 nations. No, these 2 are not welcome. Today, everybody's mixed up. The males of Ammon and Moab, not the females. Why? Why are they excluded? They can never join because they were ungrateful. They were ungrateful to the Jewish people. Our forefathers were nice to them, to their forefathers, and they didn't return the favor. They didn't reciprocate. And because of that, the Torah says they cannot join. The Egyptian who killed you, enslaved you, you suffered in his hands. He can convert after 3 generations. Fine, but he can join you. They can't. Look how terrible ungratefulness is. It must be really bad that we don't want them amongst us. We don't want them to spoil us, to ruin our character through this terrible characteristic called ungratefulness. Wow. Physically, the Egyptians hurt us. Okay, that's okay. They hurt you in this world. They didn't destroy your character. If a person's character is destroyed, he may lose his world to come. He may lose everything. He may miss the boat, as they say in English, in forgetting what his main purpose in life is. If a person is ungrateful, he will miss the boat. He will not make too many friends. He will not have such a good relationship at home. It really matters a lot, this particular characteristic called gratefulness. Where do we see this in Jewish tradition? The moment you wake up. From the moment we wake up, what do we say? Modeh ani lefanecha. I thank you, God, that you restored my soul. Some people went to sleep last night and didn't wake up this morning. I appreciate it. I realize it. I don't take it for granted. Thank you very much. Odul Hashem ki tov ki l'olam chazor. Look at the prayers. How much thanks, how much praise to the Almighty. All the blessings we say. We come out of the bathroom. Thank God everything is functioning. Some people are on dialysis. Their kidneys are not working right. Thank God everything is okay. Everything is working fine. We don't take it for granted. If everything is okay, we thank Hashem for it. Look how much gratitude there is on a daily basis in our prayer book, in the blessings that we make. We just read in the Torah about an individual who recently got married. He's exempt from going to fight, from going to battle. Everybody's being drafted. He's not drafted. Why? During the first year of his marriage, he has to make his wife happy. He has to cement the relationship. The first year is very important. The beginning, important. But I had a question, and I need to ask this to the men. How do you make a woman happy? That's very difficult, no? Buy her a piece of jewelry? I have to ask the women now, does a woman ever get tired from a certain piece of jewelry? No? How do you make a woman happy? So what's the answer? The answer is the most important characteristic that one should have that can help him greatly in making his wife happy is say thank you. Appreciate her. Appreciation. Again, we're back to appreciation. Why? Appreciation is what brings about a connection between the husband and wife. He appreciates, that means he considers her, he values her, she's important to him. That's where they connect. They may be 10 years apart. They may think differently, and believe me, men and women think very differently. There's still something connecting them, and it's not just the children. Appreciation. He respects her. He values her. And he says so. That is why this particular quality is so important. But it's not only because of the relationship. What are we talking about here? We're talking about trying to develop integrity, which means that we will be refined everywhere, at home and elsewhere, through appreciation of another individual. We will be connected to them. We will value them. We will look up to them. We will not look down to them. Because looking down at someone is the exact opposite of connecting with them. It causes distance, it causes hatred, it causes division and discrimination. In the same way that appreciation is the key or the remedy to the ills of double standards and dishonesty, lack of appreciation, looking down at someone, is unfortunately the key that will sever the relationship, that will make people be very distant from each other. It begins by looking down. One will not swindle another individual unless he first looks down at him. He doesn't like him. He doesn't care about him. Would somebody swindle another individual if he looked up to him and appreciated him? I don't think so. It's a contradiction. In order for someone to cheat and to lie to someone, he has to look down at them. So you see how appreciation saves the day? How appreciation strengthens him enough to not want to be like that, dishonest, right? To have double standards? No, he's always going to be the same because he appreciates people for what they do for him. That's key number one. Key number two is not to speak lashon hara, not to gossip or slander about anyone, not to be negative about someone, not to look at anyone in a negative way, not to make negative remarks about anyone, which is basically what we just said, not to look down at anyone. Lashon hara, the rabbis point out, is very, very serious. Slandering someone, making derogatory remarks, by the way, there's a whole lecture about this, is very dangerous. Dangerous to the entire nation. You can kill someone's reputation just by talking about them. Very dangerous. But it's not just what you do to others, it's what one is doing to himself by behaving this way. How could he be honest, kind, generous, sincere if he's talking negatively about other people? It's in some ways a contradiction. There's no integrity there. There's something lacking there. There's a hole in his personality by looking down at people, discriminating against them. He cannot be 100% honest or genuine. So the second key is to be very careful in this area of lashon hara, the area of making derogatory and negative remarks about others. And last but not least, is to learn to be charitable, to be kind to others. People believe in this, people think it's right, people think it's a good thing to do, but do they really do it? What does it mean to be charitable? Does anybody know here what it means to be charitable? Can you tell me, what do you think it is? It doesn't just mean taking out a quarter or a dollar. That's very nice of you. Real charity means, have a nice day. I wish I could do more for you. But I assure you, one of these days, you will be helping out other people instead of getting help from others. Giving him encouragement, stimulating him, making him feel good. That's real tzedakah. As the rabbis tell us, whoever gives charity to a poor man is blessed with 6 blessings. But whoever says a kind word to him will be blessed with an additional 11, a total of 17. If you give somebody money and then yell at him, why don't you just get yourself a job next time? It would have been better off not even giving him and not saying anything to him. You know what you've done to him, God forbid? It's terrible. The pain, the emotional pain that people suffer may never be repaired. We have to be very careful with our words. If we do say something, it should be kind and sensitive. That can make a world of difference. We can help people a lot more with our words than we can with our money. How much can you give him already? He needs thousands of dollars for whatever he's collecting. How much could you give him, unless you're a very wealthy man? Unfortunately, it doesn't come easy to those who are wealthy. The wealthier an individual is, the more difficult he has in helping others who are in need. Isn't that interesting? You would think he has millions of dollars. Can't he share some of his wealth? Can you tell me what's going on here? What happened here? This man has millions of dollars. Can't he share some of that wealth? The easy answer is what the rabbis tell us. Kol hagadol mechavero, yitzro gadol himenu. Whoever is greater than his friend, wealthier, smarter, whatever it is, he's just greater, his evil inclination is greater. He has a greater challenge. But that's just partially the answer. Let's not forget what we said earlier. Man is born, to some extent, selfish. He thinks of himself. And some people have a large dose of selfishness. And even if they have millions of dollars, they can't see another individual in front of them. They don't think highly of them. They don't care about them. Therefore, they're not going to be sensitive about them. Here, take $5. You could do a lot more. And this has always been the case throughout history. People have been very wealthy, people who were very prosperous, and could easily have helped others who are in need, didn't do so. It is usually the people who don't have so much money who are kinder and more generous to the poor. Ultimately, this is a big challenge. And this challenge we will be able to succeed in if we refine our character to be more honest, more sincere, more sensitive. Then it becomes easier to be charitable. It also takes training. It also takes getting used to. People who are not used to giving have to get used to giving, and then it becomes second nature. But ultimately, it has to start somewhere, which takes us back to our original message of tonight. Charity, now we're talking about the real charity, begins at home. Not only the honesty, not only the attention to one's wife and kids, the charity that we actually help out others. The kids will see it. The kids will see how their dad or their mom are so helpful, are so kind and considerate, how they're willing to take people into their homes, how they're willing to treat people who are in need of some help, taking of their time. Time is sometimes more valuable than the money. You're giving a person time, you're giving them attention. But what does all this do? It's not only doing a favor to the poor man. The rabbis tell us that the individual who gives is being helped a lot more than the one who's on the receiving end. The one who gives is being helped more than the one that's on the receiving end? Yes. Because the one that gives, first of all, will earn tremendous merits as a result of being so helpful and so kind and considerate. But it's not only the merits. It's not only the merits. What has this done to him as a person, as an individual? He has learned to become a more charitable and kinder man, a less selfish individual through actions that he has performed. Actions that have to do with giving and not taking. And that's what life is all about. Everyone has the ability to give, even if they don't have money, to give in some way. And to learn to be a giver instead of a taker requires some work. It requires of one to learn about this. You just don't think about it on your own. That is why we learn about it continuously. How important it is, how much of a difference this will make to the individual, to the world. The world will become a much better place if everybody would be involved in this, if everybody would care about others, everybody would look up to them and have respect for others and not discriminate. We would have no troubles, no wars, no nothing. But look at the whole history. Read any history book. On every continent without any exception, Africa, Europe, Asia, America, North and South, war, problems, politics, corruption. What's going on? Selfishness, no honesty, no sincerity. Why not? Because obviously it didn't start at home. Had this been emphasized at home, in every single home, how important this is, then society would be different. Charity begins at home. All of these beautiful qualities that we appreciate, that we understand how valuable they are, and we'd love to implement them, it would be a lot easier if it began at home, where there was a role model for us to emulate, where the seeds have been already planted, where we already got used to it. And all we need to do is continue with it. Then there wouldn't be double standards. Then we would be the same, hopefully, at home and on the outside. Nice on the outside and nice on the inside. Why should it be any different? Only because it's not genuine. It's not 100% real. There's no integrity. It wasn't learned well. So it can't be implemented everywhere. We implement it at work because we have no choice. We want to save our job. We want to be promoted. We want to look nice. Don't you want to look nice to your wife? It's a lot harder. To please your wife is a lot more difficult, but it doesn't have to be. Once we understand the importance of treating other people in a respectful way, once we understand how important it is to appreciate others, then it would come a lot easier. It all depends on whether we want to be a giver or a taker. That's what it comes down to. Are you going to be selfish or unselfish? You want to be unselfish, then you have to use that medication, those keys that will remedy or refine one's character. Be appreciative, be very careful how you look or talk about other people. And number 3, train yourself to be charitable. Get used to helping others, be kind to them. And last but not least, when one does act in this way, by being sensitive and charitable to others, when one has compassion over others, then we are told, Kol ha-merachem ala briot, merachamim alav min hashamayim. Whoever looks after other individuals, whoever cares about others, sensitive to them, shows compassion to others, then they will be compassionate with him from heaven as well. Amen.